Translate the phrase into a mathematical expression, then evaluate the expression for a equals 12 and b equals 4. So let's see what our first problem tells us. The first problem, we're working with a difference. If you remember, a difference means that we're going to be doing subtraction. So when you're doing these problems, it's a good idea to, as you read through the problem, mark the key words that you see and make some little notes to yourself about what operations those different words talk about. So if I'm going to find the difference of a and b, it means I'm going to be subtracting a and b. So my translation is going to look like a minus b. So there I've done the translate part. That's the first thing they told us to do, was to translate. But then they go on and say, then evaluate. So now we want to put in a, instead of a, we're going to put in the value 12, and instead of b, we're going to put in the value 4. So let's go ahead and do that step. So instead of a, we're going to evaluate that for when a equals 12. So I'm going to take the a out and I'm going to put the 12 into place. And then we're going to subtract the value of b. We'll notice that the value of b in this case is 4. Now you might be thinking, do I really need to put in those parentheses? And it's true that you really don't need to in this particular problem, but there will be problems where having the parentheses are really helpful. And so I typically tend, every time I do an evaluate problem, I'm going to isolate my variable in the parentheses and then slip the variable out, slip the value in, and then that way I've got the parentheses in case I need them. They're not always necessary, like in this case. Now if we do our simplification of this, if we simplify 12 minus 4, that just means do the math, and 12 minus 4 just gives us 8. So here we translated, and here we evaluated. The next problem, we're being asked to find the product of a and b. Well, product is a key word that means to multiply. So if we're going to find the product of a and b, we'll take a times b. And we can write a times b this way with the multiplication dot. We could also write a times b using the parentheses and juxtaposition. But because these are both variables, we don't necessarily need the parentheses if we're going to use juxtaposition. We can just write it down as AB. So any one of these would be an acceptable way to write down the product of A and B. Now if we do the evaluate part, remember we have to do both. We've translated, and so now we're going to evaluate. The value for A that they gave us was 12, so let's go ahead and take that A and put in the 12, and the B they told us was 4, so let's put in the 4, and you can see here where those parentheses are now really helpful to help us see the multiplication that's going on when we do that substitution. So 12 times 4 would give me a final simplified answer of 48. So remember, we basically have two answers to this part. Here's the answer to the translate question, and here's the answer to the evaluate question. We want to be sure we have both pieces in place when we respond to the question, because that's what the directions asked us to do.